Hey everyone, I think we're live now. Welcome to the Learn with Launch session. This is part 2 this week of our 8 things that you need to know about advertising in 2024. So we're going to do some quick introductions first. I'll go first, Harry, so that you get the format. I'm Jay. I'm the founder of Launch, and we call ourselves the Happy Performance Agency. And that's because we really love working with great clients, with great team members, and we try and bring happiness to everything that we do. Some of you who follow me on LinkedIn know that we love biscuit chat. So hashtag lol biscuit. My favorite biscuit is a jammy Dodger. Harry, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm Harry. I'm a senior paid media executive here at Launch. I can vouch for the happiness thing. It isn't just for show, Jay. Everybody here is as happy as we seem. And my favourite biscuit, we've done this question a lot, so it should be something I'm familiar with. I'm going to say a bourbon, which I have been criticised for in the past, to be fair. But yeah, I can't go wrong with a chocolate bourbon.
I do a cup of tea and a bourbon. I'm with you, Harry. I am with you. So one of the reasons that we're doing this session today is because you were live at Building Brands a couple of weeks ago, and not everybody got to see your talk. So last week we did our part 1, which was the first few things with Becky, where we talked about Pinterest and we talked about social commerce. So today, Harry, what are we going to be talking about? Just give us a quick overview of some of the things we're going to cover.
Yeah, of course. For anybody who hasn't heard or seen Building Brands, Dave Briggs does an awesome job. So shout out to him.
Dave.
And yeah, definitely check out Building Brands if you get a chance in future. Today we're going to start off by talking a bit about AI and automation and how you can embrace it. It's a bit of a buzzword at the moment. I know people are definitely interested in that. We're going to move on to carrying on about smart bidding enhancements, things like value-based bidding. There's a little bit of Microsoft chat in there as well, discussing Performance Max controversies. So yeah,
Awesome.
Good.
Well, without further ado, Harry, I'm going to disappear off the screen. I'm going to add your slides and I will see you on the other side. And just a reminder for everyone, this is a live session. We're live on LinkedIn and we're live on YouTube. So please do ask questions and we'll come to your questions at the end. So take it away, Harry.
Thank you very much. So, as Jay said, yeah, part 2 of A Brave New World, 8 things you need to know about online advertising going into 2024. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is embracing AI and automation. I've even put there we had to, right? It's something that everybody's talking about. Everyone's trying to make use of, whether they like it or not. I know there's a lot of mixed opinions. So I'm sure when people first hear the term AI or even automation of any description, they probably think of one of these logos here, right? With potentially ChatGPT being the most commonly talked about. So instead of using ChatGPT to come up with funny poems or tell you the best sort of pasta recipes, how can we use these within paid media? So ChatGPT and Google Bard, tools like that can be really useful when it comes to coming up with headline and description examples or just giving you a bit of inspiration if you're stuck with what to do. I know most people that work in advertising and paid media, sometimes you can have a bit of a mind blank or not know where to start. So they can be really useful for just sort of brainstorming ideas. I'm not sure if we're allowed to say brainstorming anymore, but we'll go with it. Copilot, although it's not directly linked to paid media or advertising, it can be really useful for sort of day-to-day efficiencies, things like summarizing meeting notes and things like that, which can help save you a lot of time. And it's also used in Microsoft Clarity. So for any of you out there who are familiar with Microsoft Clarity or what it does, Copilot can be used to summarize screen recordings. So instead of spending hours going down rabbit holes and watching screen recordings, Copilot can help you save a bit of time there too. So next, if we have a look at smart bid strategies. So about 4 or 5 years ago, smart bid strategies made some massive changes and improvements to try and drive people forward into using them rather than being stuck back in the days of manual CPC. So a manual CPC bid strategy, for anybody that doesn't know, is basically where you just assign a max value that Google will bid up to. And then you won't basically bid over that amount for a cost per click. Which is quite limited and manual, as it says in the name. So moving then and looking at automated bid strategies and how those have changed. So automated bid strategies use things like website behavior, buying signals, a whole host of different things, and that's where Google decides when to bid and how much based on those sort of signals, rather than just that capped cost per click that you had. So if you haven't made the leap from sort of manual cost per click to smart bidding already, that's definitely something to consider. Okay, so value-based bidding is sort of an enhanced version of using smart bidding, or a more trained way of using smart bidding, right? So on the left-hand side, you can see that we've got a simple conversion-based bid strategy, where there's a line of a cost per acquisition or CPA bid of around £5.50, just for this example. So you've got both missed opportunity and overinvestment when you're using something like conversion-based bidding with a target CPA. So to break that down, you've got missed opportunity where, because of your target CPA of that £5.50, you actually can't get conversions at even £6, £7, etc. The overinvestment comes in where actually you might be spending more on a conversion than you could do if you were assigning values to those conversions, which nicely segues into the example on the right hand side where you've got value based bidding. So here you can see that the higher the value of the conversion, the higher amount you can pay for that conversion, which is all trained by how much value you assign to each conversion. So it's kind of preventing that missed opportunity and overinvestment that you can see on the left. So let's take a look at how that can be used and laid out in a lead gen company who are B2B, for example. So just for the purpose of this particular example, we're going to keep it nice and simple. So a company that has 2 conversion actions. So in this instance, they want to track people that land on the form fill page as a conversion, and then people who go on and complete the form submission as a different conversion. So let's say, for example, that for every 10 people that land on the form fill page, one of those submits a form, giving you a conversion rate of around 10%. To then determine how you would value those within the Google Ads platform, you'd have a £10 cost per a £10 value for the conversion of somebody landing on the page and £100 for the form submission. So those proxy values are basically how you can outline this for somebody who's in lead gen or B2B, as sometimes deciding values isn't as straightforward as we've shown there. Okay, so moving on to attribution models. Are attribution models dead? So an explanation from Google as to what an attribution model is, and this is put really nicely. So attribution models let you choose how much credit each ad interaction gets for your conversions. If we take a look at how attribution models looked potentially a while ago, or well, not that long ago for some people, depending on how often you look at conversions and attribution models. So there used to be 6 different types of attribution models, ranging all the way through from time decay to first and last click attribution. And each of these assigns a different level of credit to that conversion. So you can see in the diagrams, it kind of shows how those attribution models are defined, whether it being linear, as in equal attribution, or last click and first click kind of speak for themselves. And this can mean that if you looked in an ads account with all of these 6 attribution models being in play, it can be quite confusing. So you can have all sorts of different conversions, all being given different levels of attribution. And that can be quite messy sometimes. However, as you can see on the right, Google sent out a lovely worded email to loads of people saying that if you didn't upgrade your attribution model to data-driven, they were going to do it for you. And on the left-hand side, you can now see that there's not as many attribution models as there used to be. And we're now just given data-driven or last click, and with data-driven being recommended. So that might seem a bad thing or a negative for some people, but it's definitely not something to be afraid of. And data-driven attribution has a lot of positives, which we're going to come on to now. So data-driven attribution, as I'm sure we're all aware, so when there's a user who completes a conversion or purchases something online, they don't just use one sort of channel or one direct route anymore. There's loads of different touch points within a user buying or conversion journey. So you've got things like video, social, Google, search. There's an endless amount of ways that people interact with ads before they buy something. So it's only fair that those different touch points are given the same level of credit and are attributed correctly. So data-driven attribution means that sometimes in an ads account, you might have 0.3 or 0.5 of a conversion, which for a lot of people can seem quite strange. They look at conversions and they say they've got 32.33 conversions for the month, which particularly if you're looking at form fills and stuff like that, it can be quite difficult to get your head around, but it just means that using data-driven attribution, you're giving your conversions the right level of credit rather than over or under reporting. Okay, so Performance Max controversy 1 year later, which is quite an interesting and big topic. So in September of 2022, Google made some updates and announced that smart shopping campaigns were going to be forcibly upgraded to Performance Max, which was released at the end of 2021. So this was quite a substantial change for a lot of ads accounts because it was going to change the way that advertisers ran shopping campaigns. Performance Max combines a lot of different channels, so search, display, video, and many more, which means that your standard sort of smart shopping campaigns that you were running weren't able to run in that way anymore. So it's quite a significant change, and it definitely rustled some feathers, to say the least. So when Performance Max first came out, particularly here at launch, and I know many people across the industry noticed some issues with it, and just a few of them are. So the first one being, we referred to it as a black box, meaning that the level of reporting and insights that we thought we were going to get, we actually weren't able to when the platform first came out. Things like direct search terms took a while to populate, and not all of them showed, which is something that we weren't necessarily used to. And just the level of insights as to how your campaign was doing weren't quite where we wanted them to be. So you could be seeing really good results and want to know, a bit more about what was happening and whether you could do more of it across your ads account. But unfortunately, that was a no from Google. So although that's come a long way, which we'll come on to in a minute, at the start, it was definitely a bit of a cause for concern. The second one being automated video ads. So if you didn't provide Google with video content within your asset group, they actually created one for you. And it's probably safe to say that they weren't winning an award anytime soon. Some of them were catastrophic, to be honest. But it's something that was picked up on quite easily. I think Google are doing their best to make those auto-generated videos a lot better. They introduced basically part within the platform where you can create one using your own assets. So it gives you a little bit more control, but if you didn't create one at the start, it wasn't made very clear that actually they'd create one for you. And like I said, they weren't great. And the final issue that we noticed being the level of spam leads. So obviously taking into account that campaigns were using display and video placements within the sort of search network that they were running. Performance Max was generating a lot of spam leads for some users. It wasn't all advertisers, but some definitely experienced higher levels of spam leads than others. And this has come a long way. As again, it's something that was quite a cause for concern again for some people at the start, but it's definitely dialed down. So that sort of placement side of things has definitely become more sophisticated. So how can you make the most and get the most out of your Performance Max campaigns over the next 12 months? So some of these will probably outline some of the things that Becky mentioned in her first 4 points, which if you haven't watched, definitely go back and watch that. So the first one being creative. So take time when choosing your creative for your Performance Max campaign. It's not something to be rushed, and make sure that you rotate your creative as frequently as you feel you need to. So decide which creative you need to use for your audience and make sure that you've got enough of them so that it can show sort of new content whenever it feels the need to. The second one being asset group and listing group management. So in making sure that you've got the right level of asset groups to highlight all of your products and services is really important, but it's important to not go overboard or underboard when it comes to these asset groups. So don't go sort of Hail Mary and have an asset group for everything, because then you're spreading yourself too thin. So take time and sort of decide how many of these do we actually need to get the message across. And then the third one being audience signal capabilities. So there's so much that can be done with audience signals already, and there will be even more that you can do in sort of 3, 6, 12 months time. Anything from adding in competitor URLs or adding in different websites, and using your own data to make sure that you train Google into finding the kind of customers you already have and the kind of customers you want them to go out and find can be really beneficial. So definitely sort of have a deep dive into audience signal capabilities. Okay, so our final point for today is Microsoft finally challenging Google? No, that was easy. However, so there are some advantages to Microsoft, or just some differences that show that Microsoft can be useful for a whole load of different industries, and some get more success than others. So it's about deciding whether it's the right industry for you to use Microsoft on. So the things you should be asking yourself. So within Microsoft, who are your target audience? What device are they on and what segment are they in? So Microsoft has a whole load of different data about where its customers are coming from. There's over 605 million monthly PC searches and 29 unique PC users a month. So there's a much bigger sort of computer demographic there rather than on mobile. And just have a think about whether your audience are on Microsoft, because not everyone is, which is why it's not necessarily as popular. Definitely doesn't outshine Google, but it's worth having a look and seeing if the kind of people you're looking for are on Microsoft. And there's a link there to the Microsoft audience details, where you can basically find out the right segments and basically the industries that are on Microsoft. So LinkedIn profile targeting is a unique feature of the Microsoft Ads platform. So this is where you can basically match up LinkedIn profile targeting to the kind of people you're trying to target within your Microsoft ads. So instead of doing this as a basically condensing your audience or making it more niche, it actually works off a bid adjustment. So it will only bid higher when it finds those people that you're looking for. It's something that's only available in certain countries, so it's definitely one to check if you're targeting further afield. But it is available in the US, UK, Canada, and Australia, so it covers quite a large percentage already. Specific service ads give different industries a bit of a new identity on the Microsoft Ads platform. So you can see at the top, you've got automotive ads. So those in the automotive industry get a bit of a hybrid between a shopping and a display campaign, just to kind of push vehicle leasing or car sales just in a slightly different way. And then insurance, real estate, and tax services are also given a bit of just a new identity, I guess, on the Microsoft platform. It's not necessarily anything groundbreaking, but it just shows that there is a niche for it. So in July this year, Microsoft Performance Max was announced, and as you can see by the infographic type thing there, Microsoft and Google launches have been a bit anticlimactic, to say the least, in the past, right? So Microsoft has been known to sort of just copy Google, but not necessarily do it as well. Apologies if there's any serious Microsoft fans out there, but that is how particularly the industry has seen it. So the question on everyone's mind was Performance Max going to be the same, or had Microsoft sort of finally changed the game when it came to Performance Max? So unfortunately, I don't have the nice sort of tick and cross that I had. But on the left-hand side, we've got some of the positives, and on the right-hand side, some of the negatives for Microsoft Performance Max so far. So on the left-hand side, asset group reporting. So asset group level reporting is available in Microsoft Performance Max, which means you can make sort of lower scale decisions. So what assets are working well, whether you need to change any of those asset groups out. Asset group reporting will help you to make those decisions. Ad type exclusion allows you to eliminate necessarily any of those ad types that aren't as relevant to your audience. And negative keyword lists a similar theme, where you can negative out any of those keywords that you don't want to appear for. Some of the not so good things about Microsoft Performance Max so far is there's no video content available, which is probably a bit of a negative for some of those that have quite visually, aesthetically pleasing products or services. It's very slow to learn. which might not come as a surprise to many people. However, there can sometimes be scenarios where up to 2 weeks before impressions start to really take off, which that might be enough for some advertisers to not want to use it at all, which I completely understand, but you do have to bear with it. And no custom segments again, which just means you're slightly more limited when it comes to adding in things like search terms and different demographics and targeting. So just to summarize some of the points that we've been over today. So don't be afraid of smart bidding. It's here to stay, and slowly but surely Google are sort of forcing you into using it. But that's not a bad thing. It's definitely something to jump on board with and learn about which smart bid strategies work for which campaigns. Data driven is the way forward. So similar to smart bidding, it's something to jump on board with. And it's definitely the right way to be running your ads account. So you should be using data driven attribution if you're not already. Number 3, so Performance Max has come a long way in the past 12 months, and it's definitely going to go even further in the next 12 months. Google are constantly releasing updates for it and trialing new things. Even as recent as this week, there's been updates made to the Performance Max campaign type, so keep an eye out for it and keep learning how you can optimize those Performance Max campaigns. And finally, consider your Microsoft audiences. So, like I said, there's definitely an audience for Microsoft. It's just about whether that audience is right for you. Thank you very much. And Jay's back in.
Amazing, Harry. Honestly, some brilliant learnings there. And I'm just going to remind people that that they can ask questions. We have got some great questions, but before I dive into them, Harry, I want to say well done, because it's really tricky to do those things where you're the only one on the stage. There's lots of people watching live on LinkedIn and you can't see that. So thank you everyone who is watching us live on LinkedIn. And thank you for those of you who are watching it back on the recording as well, that will be available later. So I've got a quick question while before we go to the other ones. What's your opinion on Microsoft advertising?
Oh, I have to be careful how I answer it, because I know that anybody in launch watching will also have different opinions. There's examples of where Microsoft advertising can work really well. I think the most important thing with Microsoft advertising is don't just treat it the same as Google Ads. You have to have a completely different strategy for it. So I think a lot of people kind of, without making it sound like a shortcut, might just do a copy and paste job, right? They might just take exactly what they're doing on Google and put it on Microsoft. That isn't going to work. Or if it did work in the past, it's not going to work anymore. So I think there's definitely a use for it. As I sort of mentioned, there's an audience, and I think it is a specific audience. So I think a lot of people maybe use Microsoft as a tick box and feel the need to use it. And I don't think you should rush into that. I think you have to really take time and think, is it right for your audience?
Yeah.
But there's definitely a use for it.
And I've been doing this a long time, over 12 years now. And back in the day, you just do a easy import. You wouldn't really spend much time on the strategy, because the strategy was set with what you were doing in Google. But what I really do like about Microsoft is that you've got to love a challenger brand. You've got to love their ability to try new things. What they're doing with the LinkedIn audience targeting is phenomenal. And I always think B2B, or slightly older customer segments, works really well on Microsoft as well. So
Yeah, sure.
we've got a couple of your colleagues just wanted to give you some high fives there, and John, a little bit of a show of support there. And thank you, Rosetta, as well. She's just mentioning that Sam couldn't make it to your building brands, and Rosetta missed your building brands talk as well. So they're really, really pleased that you're doing these LinkedIn lives. So yeah, well done. So I'm gonna start with Becky's question. In fact, that's not a question, that's a point that she's making there, but she has got a follow-up question. But creative, she's obviously our head of performance creative. She's a very big fan of making sure that that the creative is good. But her question is, what about video? Do you recommend investing in video?
Yeah, so video can be super powerful using things like YouTube ads. Obviously, the introduction of Performance Max means that there's not as much of a need for it necessarily as there was. Historically, the only way you'd have video showing in your ads account was through YouTube campaigns or through things like other alternative display campaigns. But there's definitely a use for it. I think depending on the industry, again, some companies' videos might not be as ready for the YouTube platform or as ready on Google Ads as they could be. But I think maybe a smaller percentage of the investment just at the beginning. But yeah, I would.
Yeah, and I would definitely say from a wider strategic point of view, all brands need to be investing in video in some way because it's a really powerful tool. It's cost effective to use it in your advertising, and it's super engaging at being able to get across a really clear message. So yeah, it's a definite yes to your question, Becky. This is a slightly harder question. So right at the beginning, you were talking about value-based bidding, which can be used, if I'm right, in both B2B and e-commerce. Like, it doesn't matter what kind of business you are. But for those that haven't got a real value, you talked about a proxy value. If you can recap on that, and also how do you decide what it is?
Yeah, of course, that's a great question. So proxy values are basically where instead of having an official value like you might do in e-commerce of said conversion, or if you're using things like pulling it in from a CRM or something like that, this proxy value that you design is just to try and train the algorithm to know which of your conversions is worth more. So a really good example of this is I went through this with a client the other day on a call where we basically sat down and just had a discussion and said, so these are your conversion actions. We put them in a list, and I basically said to them, order them for me. Which of these is most important and which of these is least important? And then deciding a value it might sound a bit like just plucking a number out the sky, but you might be able to go back, look at historically how many of those conversions you've had and what value it drove to the business. So, for example, if you were a container company or something like that, the value of X amount of closed deals might equate to a certain amount of thousands of pounds, and you can use that value as a benchmark and say, so for everyone that converts, a rough value is around £2,000 for this service. So you might assign the value at £2,000, but then just make sure that they're weighted correctly. So I guess to answer how easy it is to decide, it massively depends on how many conversion actions in the industry, but just make sure that they're weighted and in the hierarchy that you want them to, and then the whole premise behind it still works.
Yeah, there was a great example of a car. I think it was a car showroom, and they had, if somebody walks in the showroom, the percentage chance of them to lead to conversion is X. If they call on the phone, it was Y, and being able to assign those different values, but making sure they're clear enough to Google that they don't go after loads of cheap conversions. Ian, at this point, our head of data and analytics, would want me to say, rubbish in, rubbish out. Bad data equals bad everything.
So right.
I mean, it is, isn't it? We've got Mike really feeling the love for Microsoft and Bing there. Thank you, Mike. And what's one of the questions that you're kind of asked most about Performance Max, to go back to your little section on Performance Max?
So I think when people are first introduced to Performance Max, their first sort of questions are, why would we do it? Do you get control over the different ad types? So people might want to put more budget into search rather than shopping or display. I think that's probably one of the things that holds clients back the most, is that they look at it and the level of control is slightly lower. But I'd say that it's probably one of those things that you have to trust in Google. We've seen really, really strong performance with Performance Max. And I think, as I mentioned, the level of control that you're getting is getting there. It's not quite where we want it to be. But I think that is something that you just kind of have to jump on board with, to be honest.
Yeah, and making sure you've got those controls in place, that you've got those meaningful conversions coming in, so you can see how it's performing and see what impact it's making on your business. I know we're getting some great results, and not everybody is on board with it, so it's great to see where it does work. Harry, that was really awesome. I think we've had all of our questions now. So thank you so much for taking the time today. And thank you all of you at home who are, or in the office, who are watching, and those who are watching it on demand. We're back again next Friday with Danny, our head of paid, and he's going to be talking all about shopping feed optimization. So particularly as we're going heavily into Q4, we've got the Black Friday, Cyber Monday period coming up, Fake Friday. What's the other? There's another one, Fake Friday and Consideration Fortnight. Love that one.
It's becoming a whole month. It's becoming a whole month. Every year it gets bigger. So
it does. And it'll be super interesting to hear what Danny has to say next week. So thank you, Harry, and thank you, everyone. It was really great to have those learnings today, Harry.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Awesome.